think I would tell my younger self that nobody else's opinion matters because, there are still times today where I do worry a little bit about what people think. And it depends on the situation. Like, it depends on who I think I might be affecting. But, like, when it comes to social media, I've had many people who know nothing about me and know nothing about my life make judgments. And I did let that get to me at a certain point. And it definitely tears you down. And you can't let that happen because at the end of the day, like, your emotions are very sensitive. You're vulnerable, and sometimes it can be seen as being a little bit weak in a way, and people attack that. So I just, don't listen to what other people say, because honestly, nobody knows you better than you know yourself, or better than your parents know you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the One World Countless Stories podcast with me, Selena Novello. Today I have Shelby Morso. Did I get it?
Yes.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah,
Sorry,
you nailed it.
Awesome. And I'm very excited to hear a little bit more about her story. My sister actually went to school with her, and a couple months ago, my sister was like, you got to follow her. She talks about being an influencer, and she is an influencer. And so I was like, okay. So I started following her, and just how open and genuine Shelby is on her platforms is just very inspiring. So I had to ask her to be on the podcast, and here she is today. So welcome.
Hi, wow, what an introduction. Now I feel so special now.
Awesome. So let's get started. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself to everyone?
Of course. I am 23 years old. I grew up in a small town, Cochrane, Alberta. That's how I know Selena. I used to hang out with her circle, but I am a retired dancer. I started dancing when I was 4. And then only stopped about a year and a half ago from a neck injury. And now I basically just put my whole life online. I just put myself out there, and a lot of great things have come from it. And that's just where I'm at today.
That's so awesome. I'm really excited to talk about all the things that you do today, but let's get started with your childhood. Can you tell me a little bit about what it was like being raised in a small town and all the things?
Well, for one, I'm extremely blessed to have the family that I have. I have a big family. I have 3 older brothers, and I am the only girl. So I had a lot of protection growing up, which was great. But yeah, we were in a small town. So big family, small town. We knew a lot of people. We know everybody. Now it's a little bit different because this town's gotten so big.
Yeah.
So like, you go to the grocery store and you don't see everybody, but yeah, I don't know, like, Cochrane will always be home. It's always got that home vibe. Yeah, can't complain about it. I mean, I'd love to move to the big city one day or something like that, but this will always be like home for me.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with you. Cochrane is just such a warm place. I love it a lot. So Tell me about being raised with brothers, only brothers. You had no sisters. How was that?
I guess I didn't realize how, tough it made me until I started getting to know, especially as an adult, getting to know people is so different than when you're like a teenager and you're making friends. Because I mean, the harsh reality of it is that the friends you make when you're younger, they don't always stay your friends. So making connections as an adult, I started to realize all of the perks from growing up with brothers. And I think it made me a lot tougher, emotionally, physically, in so many ways. And lots of people don't have that. Some kids are like an only child. They only maybe have a sister or a brother. So it was a big blessing. And I see there's little moments throughout the day where I'm like, okay, I kind of pick up on things, and I'm like, I have my brothers to thank for, teaching me this or making me this way. So, and they were always a great influence on me, which was a bonus.
Yeah, that's important. And where are you in the sibling rank? Are you the oldest, youngest?
I'm the youngest.
You're the youngest. Oh, wow.
I'm the baby, and I'm the only girl. So
yeah,
I got it good.
Double protected.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
My brothers were always I know lots of siblings fight too. It's normal to fight with your siblings, but my family, we just have a different connection. Like, my brothers are my best friends. We still hang out with each other as much as we can. We tell each other everything. we're siblings, but we've got like that friendship bond too, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's so important. And that's something
Yeah.
that a lot of people don't have. So you're very lucky. That's cool.
Yeah, especially with so many siblings, because sometimes it's hard to keep
Mhm.
every relationship the same. Like you're gonna have different relationships with different siblings, but I think we're pretty level-headed when it comes to that. Like we all give each other like the same amount of respect, and
That's
yeah,
good.
it's great.
And why do you think it's like that?
Honestly, like our parents just raised us that way. Like we know how to play with each other. We know how to respect each other. We know how to talk to one another, which is just again, as an adult, a big bonus. We know
Mhm.
how to communicate well. Yeah, so I think we owe that to our parents.
That's so awesome. And did you
Yeah.
start dancing when did you start dancing?
I started dancing when I was like 4.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
I mean, I wasn't like anything good. I'm pretty sure the first time I ever did a solo, I was so nervous that I did it backwards. I don't know how I did that, but I did it backwards. And it's honestly, it traumatized me ever since. But I mean, you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, and you kept going. That's amazing. So, what was it like growing up as a dancer?
It was everything. For me, my parents just wanted me to be happy. So obviously they wanted us to focus on school. But for me, like my passion was dance. So that's where I'm going to put in all my time and effort. Um, and it wasn't always easy for me to make friends at school because
Mhm.
I do have a shy side to me and I really shut down. But at dance it was different because dancers just kind of seem to understand each other in a certain way. It's hard to explain, but you definitely have to have a certain mindset in that environment. So everybody's got the same mindset and you mesh well together. So I met some of my best friends through dance. And that was always like my safe place, my like outlet to go to. It was
Mhm.
almost like a second family when I was growing up.
That's awesome. And would you say that you struggled through school?
Oh yeah, don't we all?
I was gonna say, yes, I do.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's totally normal and something that not a lot of people admit all the time. Like for
Mm.
high school, some people, it's great. It's like the best years of their life. But also that lots of people peak in high school and that will be the best moments of their life. So, I mean, everybody's got a different story, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, what was that mindset you're talking about that you had to have in dance?
It was just like you had to be there to be a team player. Like it's fun and you're there because you want to be there, but like also you have a team to support. You have like if somebody needs you, you need to be able to listen and just really being a team player is a sort of mindset that you have to like live through to understand. You can't just one day decide that you're going to do that. It's
Mhm.
like putting others before putting yourself, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
so, what was the highlight of your dance career, would you say?
Oh my gosh, there's probably so many. Let me think. Let me think of the best one. When I was 20, I started dancing in the city. I had
Mhm.
taken like a break for a couple years. I started dancing in the city with this education company, and we actually got to compete in Mexico.
Oh, wow.
So it was called Dancer's Paradise. We had routines ready. There was a big competition, but we were there for like 7 days. So you're basically going on a vacation. But
Yeah.
companies from all around the world came. Like I have friends in Australia, I have friends in California, all over the world. You
Mhm.
just met so many amazing people, and it was like a once in a lifetime experience. So that would definitely be a highlight.
That sounds awesome. And so
Yeah.
you said you took a break?
Yeah,
Or
I did. I
what?
took a break when I graduated because, to be honest, I had no idea what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And um, I just didn't know. Like, honestly, I got super discouraged and I didn't know if it would work out for me. And I think it's totally normal to feel that way. And I was afraid to get back into it, which
Mm.
is something I never want to feel it. Like, I never want to be afraid to do what I love. So I started doing it in the city and I only did it for about 3 years in the city, and then I had my neck injury.
Right. So
Yeah.
we'll talk about your neck injury in a minute, but when you were little, what did you always want to be when you grew up?
Oh, honestly, I don't even know because I feel like it changed often. It changed all the time, but I always just liked to perform. And I don't think I knew exactly what it is that I wanted to do, but I kind of like entertaining people.
Yeah.
And it's changed over the years. Like before it was dance, so I'd like to just, kind of tell people my story through dance, but
Mhm.
now it's transitioned into being like a on social media and being an influence to other people. So I just always try and be the goofiest version of myself because that way I'm still entertaining people, even if I can't do it from the stage.
That's so awesome because I'm like, I can definitely see how that passion from so little has shown up in multiple areas of your life, which is just so cool. So let's talk about the neck injury. What happened and how did that affect you?
It honestly, it wasn't like one moment. It was just I started when I was so young, and unfortunately, in the dance community, you retire early regardless of, where you're at. But I started so young and I did it competitively my whole entire life. So just overuse and not taking like the right methods to recover, I guess. Like
Mhm.
constantly keeping up with the chiropractic appointments and massages and stretching, and it gets to be a lot.
Mhm.
And I think like for me, I just wasn't listening to my body and giving it the rest that it needed. So I also think it was a blessing in disguise too, because I would have never, I think, found my voice if I had lost dance, because that was all I ever did, right? And I felt like that was all I'd ever be good at. And it kind of got to a point for me where I was like, every time someone's asking me how I'm doing, they're asking me about dance. They're not asking me about, my life and my accomplishments. It's like I was only ever a dancer and I wanted to be more than that. So
Mhm.
it was a hard pill to swallow because if I had the choice, I would have never stopped. Um, but you have to listen to your body at the end of the day. So yeah.
And what would you say, other than your injury, what was the hardest part about being in dance for so long?
Um, definitely like learning to just take constructive criticism from my leaders was that's like never going to be easy for anybody. Nobody likes to hear that you're like not doing good or something doesn't look good. So that was something I always had to keep in the back of my mind through my whole career, because even when we were younger, like you struggle a lot with like body dysmorphia because sometimes your teachers make comments, or if you're like I did ballet for a few years professionally, and they want you to look a certain way and act a certain way, and you just really have to learn to leave that at the studio and don't bring it home with you, because it can be really toxic.
And did you find that you fell into that toxicity sometimes?
Oh, absolutely. Like, especially if something was said like in front of your like teammates, you're
Mm.
just like that much more like it's kind of stuck in your head, and you really go home and you think about it. But at the end of the day, you need to just know that like they're doing what they think is best for the team, right? So you just
That's
have to
such,
have thick skin.
yeah, that's a very interesting outlook. So how did you build that thick skin? Was it just over time or?
Yeah, it was over time, and I think just like I've been through a lot of, moments in my life where I've had to have thick skin, and it wasn't necessarily something that I could like just shoo off. You know what I mean? Like you definitely needed to be able to take it. Like there was times where you would go, say you're at a dance competition, we would go on stage for adjudication, and um you've got the whole audience watching you and you got all the other teams on stage, and the adjudicator can say basically whatever they want to say. So there's times where they call you out, and I would say that's an instance where you need to just have a little bit thicker skin, because you don't want to start like crying on
Yeah.
stage or take it personally. So yeah.
That's so crazy. And
Yeah.
I just find it so fascinating how, you have to learn and deal with so many different things at such a young age. And do you think that really helped shape who you are today?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's not always like what's the word I'm looking for? it's not one of the finer things in life, but it's definitely like a lesson learned. And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
everybody learns that lesson at some point, but everybody learns it differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mine was dance. Somebody else's might have been like on the soccer team or like extracurriculars and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And what was the power of dance for you? Like what were you able to do through that?
For me, I was never someone that openly expressed my emotions as much as I do today. Like I've definitely come out of my shell a lot with that, but when it came to like my mental health and things, like when I was younger, that was like not something I talked about. And I'm definitely a lot better like with it now because I'm used to it. But for me, it was like if I'm feeling a sort of like some sort of way and I can't speak about it, it sounds so cliche, but I'm gonna dance about it. Like that's the best way that I could explain it.
Mm-hmm. So you really learned to express yourself through dance.
Yeah, it definitely helped me find my voice too, in a way, like instead of just resorting to, keeping it quiet and not saying anything, it kind of pushed me to like really start speaking out about it.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
why did you start speaking out about your mental health and start talking about it more?
Honestly, one day I just got to a point where it was like, oh, I just feel like I have so much to say and I never hear anybody else talking about it. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to start talking about it. And I think I sat down in my mom's room and I put my phone on the windowsill and I think I probably recorded for about 2 hours just blabbering, just talking and then I would cry and then I would talk some more, but I cut it down into a video and I posted it on my Instagram and I labeled it like my truth and I just kind of started talking about what I was going through
Mm-hmm.
and why like the things that I struggled with on the daily and from there like people reciprocated they took that in and they gave back to me too and it just made me feel like okay if this is like something that's going to be beneficial for not only me but for others I'm going to keep doing it. And I still do it today.
Awesome. And what
Yeah.
were some of those things that you expressed in that video? Like you said, there was things that you dealt with on the daily. What were those things?
Just feeling like I wasn't good enough. And I think a lot of that did come from growing up as a dancer and like constantly being criticized about, the way you look, the way you act. So I just had to stop. Like at a certain point, it got so bad that I was like starting to believe those things. I was starting to think, okay, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not fit for this. And that's when I started realizing that was deserving of that and I didn't need to feel that way. And I don't honestly think I would have changed that mindset if I didn't start just like talking about it out loud.
Mm-hmm. That's so
Yeah.
amazing. And I love that you saw that nobody was doing this. You're like, nobody's talking about this. And you just were so vulnerable and open and putting it out on the internet. So was that like scary for you or what?
Oh yeah, even to this day, like I struggle often with seeing, other people online because
Mhm.
they like glamorize the lifestyle. And it's, you know what, there's a lot of great things about like being in this kind of community, but like that doesn't change the way I feel on the daily. And I'm not gonna just show the highlights of my life. But I see all the time, like still, like it's still rare to come by somebody who's gonna be like really really, really genuine and just themselves on their stories online. Like they're always using like a filter and nothing against filters. If you love filters, love that filter. But like for me personally, I just want to see someone real and raw talking about, how their mental health affected them today. I don't want to hear about, like, oh, what I got for free or which trip I'm going on. Because being on the outside looking in, it makes you think, oh my gosh, why isn't my life like that? Why am I not like, perfect?
Absolutely. And I'd love to
Yeah.
talk more about this because so I've been in this social media game for a little bit. I think it's been a year and a bit.
Yes,
And I have found there's been just crazy waves. But the biggest thing I notice is how hard it is to be vulnerable
it is.
because we have been trained, especially
Mhm.
from being on Instagram at such a young age. And I'm sure you have been on it from such a young age as well.
Yeah.
And it's weird because it's almost like they've trained us to not share those things. They're trained us to show all the happy, the highlight reels, all the
Yeah.
good things that are happening. And
Yeah.
so like it is extremely nerve-wracking and hard even to just get yourself out there. And that's why I'm like so proud of the way that you've done it, because I'm trying to do the same thing. And I'm like, it is extremely hard for me to go on the camera and be like, I am not doing very good today. And it's important that we do share that, because like you said, we see everybody's lives and we see the good parts, and we compare all of our high point, or we compare our low points to their high points.
Absolutely,
And
yes.
that's where it kind of gets a little bit toxic. So what would you say was the biggest thing that you had to shift in your social media to make it less toxic?
Like on my own social
Yeah.
media, like
Yeah.
how I basically would just go, and any account that, like, no matter what it was that they were sharing or anything like that, if I was watching the story and for a second thought like I was comparing myself to them, I would just unfollow them, because I don't need to be feeling that way. I don't need to be making myself feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think the hardest part is the very first time you open up on your story. And also, like, I'm a very emotional person. Like, I'm just very, like, highly sensitive. I've always been that way. And I cry like easily. Like, I do cry often, and
Same.
I
I
will
know
cry.
exactly.
Yeah, but it's good to cry. It's good to show people that it's okay to cry, because, like, who wants to hide their emotions,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's like you said, basically social media trained us to, like, it's something, ooh, we don't talk about that on here because it's not like something that's, it's
Mm-hmm.
not pretty and pink, and it's real. And honestly, that's what I prefer when
Mm-hmm.
if I'm going to spend time on my phone listening to other people, I want it to be like inspiring.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's an awesome piece of advice too. I've heard that multiple times, but it's so important that you go and unfollow those people that don't make
Yeah.
you feel good. Because I know for me, like sometimes you don't intentionally do it. It's just
Mm-mm.
your brain just kind of goes into that mode, and
Yeah.
you have to eliminate it, because I think it's really important that what you consume every day, because most of us can say, yeah, we go on some sort of social media at
Yeah.
least once a day,
Yeah.
and making sure that what you consume makes you feel good is so, so, so important. So
Absolutely.
I want to talk a little bit about how you got into becoming more of an influencer, and getting into that sort of
Yeah.
position, I guess.
Yeah. So, well, when I stopped dancing, I needed another outlet. So I like to call myself a creative, because I'm just constantly, like, I always have these ideas in my mind. They come out of nowhere, and I'm like, ooh, that's a good idea. That's why actually I started a podcast. Was the very first thing I did that was like influencer-ish, if that's what you
Yeah.
call it. But I had started a podcast, and oh wait, I just blanked. Where was I going with that?
It's all good.
Oh no, I'm losing it. No, okay. I had started a podcast, and I was just kind of talking about everything and anything.
Mhm.
And it was
What was it
great. I liked it was called The Evolving Bitch.
Oh, very
Yeah,
nice.
because that was at a point where I was really just starting to talk about the things that I was struggling with. So I was evolving, and I would say I'm evolved now, and I don't film anymore. It just kind of stopped happening for me.
Mhm.
But after that, I was like, I need to kind of like be making something. Like, I need to, the visions that I'm having and the things that I'm imagining, I need to create them. So I just kind of started grabbing like products that I use around the house, and setting up like a backdrop, and like trying to take all these really cool product shots. And then I just kind of started videoing like moments of my life and putting them together. I love like taking a big long project that's like 2 hours worth of footage, and like cutting it down to 7 seconds or something like that. So it was just like the idea of envisioning something and then creating it.
Mhm.
And thankfully, like, social media is the perfect place for that. And brands love that, and brands want to pay you to do that. So it just kind of worked out. It kind of fell into my lap a little bit. It just was another creative outlet for me. I didn't really think it would, be my full-time job, but I'm happy. So I guess that's all that matters.
That's good. And when did you start all that?
Oh my gosh, when did I start that? I think 2020
Okay.
was in September of 2020. I started the podcast, and I had been posting online for I think 6 months before that.
Mhm.
So that's when I really started kind of taking it seriously.
That's awesome. And what were kind of your limiting beliefs maybe around the whole thing? Because I know there's a lot of like negative, I guess, negative talk around being an influencer or a content creator, different things like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think lots of people, it's definitely like a stereotype now. You can be an influencer, and I think everybody has their own idea of what that is. And like I said earlier, a lot of people glamify it, but for me, like I don't do it for the brand deals or the money or the stuff. I do it because like I if I don't let out some of this creative energy, my brain will explode.
Yeah.
So I need to do it somewhere, and at the same time, like I'm just being myself. I'm just being honest, and like that's what it means to me. And like getting the word out there, if I can reach someone else, like if somebody else needs to just know that you're never alone, because I know that's a common feeling we have, especially when we're struggling with our emotions. You feel like you're the only one that feels that way. So
Mhm.
if I can help somebody feel less alone, then that's all I really care about. If I'm putting my life online, I just want it to be like a positive influence.
Yeah.
That's how I would describe being an influencer.
Mhm.
But you ask somebody else, they'll have a completely different definition, right?
Absolutely. And I love that you said that, like making people feel less alone, because you're right. Like, even as much as I say that too, like I'm on a mission to make people feel less alone through this podcast, to
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
bring light to that everybody is going through something in their own journeys.
Yeah.
But like, as much as I say that, even though I say that and I believe that, there's days when I feel lonely too.
Oh,
And where
absolutely.
I'm
Yeah.
like, nobody feels the way that I feel. Nobody understands. Like, we go into that mindset. So, is there a time maybe in the last couple of months where you've kind of felt that way?
Oh, absolutely. I like every other day. I think lots of people see it as like, oh, you can only feel that way like every once in a while. But
Mhm.
there's people that probably feel like that every single day because they don't have a light in their life or someone to guide them to feel differently. But when I feel that way, honestly, I just talk about it. I go on my story and I talk about it. I talk to my mom about it, and it just kind of it gets the thought out of my head, and then
Mhm.
I can stop repeating it to myself. And then
Mhm.
I don't know, I just kind of come out of it. It's weird how it works for me now, but it's become such a routine
Mhm.
that like it is something that helps me when I'm feeling that way.
Absolutely. I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm a huge talker. I love
Yeah.
to talk things through. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, have you ever tried like counseling or therapy?
Yes, I did. I went to therapy for a little bit when I was really, really struggling. And I think this was back in like 2019,
Mhm.
2018. But that was the shift in my life. That's kind of when I realized maybe this isn't for me. Like maybe I'm actually really not happy doing what I'm doing. So
Mhm.
instead of feeling like, oh, there's something wrong with me, I need to fix, what's like why I'm feeling this way. I needed to fix like what was around me. And that was something I probably couldn't have realized without going to therapy.
Mhm.
But after I figured that out, I didn't really think that I needed it because I'm thankful that I have such a great support system. Like my family, I can talk to my family about anything. But I know that lots of people don't have that. So,
Mhm.
I mean, I love therapy. It's great for anybody and everybody, but I think after like going through it, I don't need it, you know what I mean? And it's expensive too. Like
Yes. Oh, yes.
really charge you up the ass for that stuff.
You really do. It is extremely expensive. And I'm curious, what was the breaking point for you that got you to go to therapy?
Honestly, I just had to be depressed enough. I just like every single morning I would wake up and already want the day to be over. I wasn't motivated. I
Mhm.
wasn't excited to do anything. I wouldn't get dressed. I wouldn't eat. Like I'd maybe eat like one meal during the day, and then when
Mhm.
it was dinner time, I'd eat again. But it's not like I eat so much better now and I feel so much better. And
Mhm.
I realized that a lot of the time I was kind of self-sabotaging myself because I would let myself feel like that all day long, and it
Right.
would ruin my day.
Is this after you graduated or were you still in
Yes.
high? Yeah.
Yes, this was like year and a half ago.
Okay.
almost 2 years ago is when I really started kind of realizing like, okay, that's like probably not a good thing to be thinking. Like I
Yeah.
started to really come in tune with myself and realize that
Mhm.
I wasn't in a good headspace. So
Yeah. And
yeah,
something you
just,
brought up too that is so important is self-sabotage.
oh yes, love
So
that
I
word.
think we should talk about that more because I
Yeah,
think a lot of us do it. I mean, even I do it at days where we're our worst critic. We
yeah,
truly are. And sometimes we hear things from the outside world about us that we internalize and then we're like just
yep.
beating ourselves up. So I'd love to talk about how you overcame or are still working on it, maybe your self sabotage.
Yeah. I think honestly, the best piece of advice that I could give anybody is realizing that you're self-sabotaging is basically what's going to help you stop self-sabotaging. Because for the longest time, I didn't realize that I was doing it. And, you hear people talk about it or you read something online and you're like, oh, you don't really think twice about it. You don't think, oh, oh shit, that's kind of something I do. It actually took like one of my friends, I was telling her a story and she was like, it kind of sounds a little bit like self-sabotaging. And then I was like, it clicked and I was like, oh my God, I'm self-sabotaging.
Mhm.
And from there, I'm just like hyper aware of it. So I think just realizing that that's something you're doing is a step in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, just acknowledging that you're like, oh, maybe that's what I'm doing. That's
Yeah.
huge. That's a huge step in the process of healing and moving and changing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Definitely very powerful. So you were at like a very low point in your life. Would you say it was one of the lowest points?
Honestly, no, because I've done it. I feel like I do it in different situations and I've done it at different points in my life.
Okay.
And a lot of the time, it does come down to how I'm feeling about something. Like if I'm
Mhm.
extremely nervous about something and it's giving me a lot of anxiety, I will self-sabotage, so that I maybe don't have to go and do it. Instead of just being like, suck it up and go do it, I'll
Mhm.
let my like subconscious get the best of me. And I also think we've been trained a little bit to self-sabotage again through social media.
Absolutely.
So it's definitely something that people do unintentionally.
Mhm.
And it's hard to catch sometimes, honestly.
Yeah. And you talked about having a good support system and you've talked about you talk to your mom a lot. What does your relationship with your mother mean to you?
Oh, my mom is my best friend. I love her so much. Yeah, she's always made me and my brothers just feel so comfortable. And, we never felt like she was judging us or anything like that. And who better to talk to than your mom? Because she sometimes knows you better than you know yourself.
Mhm.
And I mean, I've always been close with my mom, and I know lots of people don't have that privilege of having a really close relationship with their mom or their
Mhm.
parents in general. But if you do, I definitely recommend just reaching out. I mean, it's hard. It wasn't easy for me to really start talking about this stuff to my parents because, mental health can be dark. But you just honestly, your relationship grows the more you talk and the more you express how you're feeling because they're not like they can't read your mind. Nobody can just understand you. You really have to, voice your emotions.
Absolutely. I have to agree with you on that 110%. That is like huge. Nobody can read your mind. And that's why you have to explain yourself a lot of times so
Yeah.
people can understand where you're coming from. And
Yeah.
it's really great advice because I do believe, like for me as well, my mother is huge in my life, very privileged to have a really awesome relationship with her. But I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know what I would do without her because, like, I literally
Absolutely.
talk to her
I don't
about
even want to think about
I
it.
know, right? It's sad. But like I feel like our families, a lot of the time, they've seen us at our worst, they've seen us
Yeah.
at our best, and a lot of the times they can really help guide and just be there, I think is most important. And I know some people don't have that opportunity with their family, but
Yeah.
if you do, I definitely think it's something worth working towards and working for.
Absolutely. I think it's hard to build that level of communication with your family members. I
Mhm.
mean, you have your siblings, your family, your blood, so you have open communication, but talking about something that is so personal can be hard and it can be sometimes super awkward. but at the same time, like you also don't know that side of your siblings. So they could have gone through something similar, or they just have, good advice, especially because I'm the youngest. So my brothers are older. They have more experience in some situations. And so
Mhm.
it's just good to kind of open up that like safe place to talk about that stuff with your siblings, especially if you don't have like a super close knit relationship. That's a good like door to open.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
agree with that. All right, so let's talk more about your influencing. I have so many questions because I'm curious.
Ask away.
I'm so curious about it. So you said that you started by just taking products in your house and clipping videos or taking videos of them, right? So
Yeah.
how did that get you to brand deals and working with different companies and brands?
Yeah, I think I always like when I had access to YouTube, I would always watch like makeup artists, and I would see them get all this like free makeup, and then they'd be going on these trips. And I'm like, oh, that's so fun. Like,
Mhm.
if that's your full-time job, you'd want access to this stuff, right?
Mhm.
And when I first started, like it was expensive because I was buying all these things that I needed. And um in the long run, it worked out because I would like actually need that stuff. It's not just like kind of random.
Yeah.
But then I started seeing online like people working with specific brands, and I've always had like my own like my favorite brands, right? As I'm sure so do you. So I was like, I wonder like what would happen if I reached out. And honestly, I think I reached out to brands for like a good 2 months, and I never heard anything. And I was just like, okay, I was constantly questioning myself, like maybe this isn't for me, or maybe this isn't what I want to do. And then I think the first deal that I got, they had actually reached out to me. And that was kind of all I needed for it to be like, okay, this does work and it can work for me. I just need to be patient.
Mhm.
And I also had to shift my mindset. Like I'm big on manifesting now, because
Mhm.
prior to being like that, I would, I'd be writing these emails and being like, yeah, this would be a cool brand deal. But in the back of my head, I was like, I'm not going to get it. They don't want to work with me. Like I had just such a negative mindset. And so then once I kind of started working, I started building what you would call like a resume, but like in the media space, you call it a media kit. So
Mhm.
you can just kind of showcase like your past work, all of your insights and demographics and stuff, things that brands want to see. You're basically telling them why you should work for me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I just kind of started building that up. And I think it maybe took me about 6 months. And then once I had those tools, I could really present myself, which is something that I wanted to do. I wanted to present myself in a professional way.
Mhm.
So I really took the time to just be patient with the process and build up my references and stuff like that. And then it just kind of started happening, and I had the right mindset. And honestly, it's been like that ever since. It's
Mhm.
kind of it's just kind of where it started.
That's awesome. And so tell me a little bit more about that mindset and your journey with manifestation.
Wow, okay. Where do I
Kind of a
even
big question.
start? I know I want to explain it in the best way that I can,
Yeah.
but sometimes I also get on these tangents where I just keep talking, and then I'm like, what was the purpose of that? So, um, yeah, I think again, a lot of that came from dance growing up. Like, you're in your head a lot of the time, and
Mhm.
you're constantly thinking about what's going on around you. And I think I just kind of brought that into this workplace and was constantly thinking, maybe I'm not good enough. Like I'm thinking about what other people are thinking, because I was always thinking about, okay, my teacher's watching. What's she looking for? Or somebody else is watching me. It just felt like people were watching me in a way. So
Yeah.
it's constantly in my head, feeding myself like negative information.
Mhm.
And so I was tired of it. And I read more about manifesting, and I started doing it. I just kind of started writing in my journal. I always like to write. And sometimes that's the best way for me to like let out my emotions if I'm having like a lot of anxiety during the day. I'll
Mhm.
just write like jibber jabber on the paper. But I started writing the things that I wanted for myself and believing that I already had them. And then things just started happening. And for a second, I was like, is this just luck, or is it like, is life really supposed to feel this good every day? It was almost like a foreign feeling to me because it felt good and
Yeah.
it continues to feel good. But I notice a difference when I shift that mindset. Like I have times where I'll have like 2, 3 really good months where I'm extremely motivated and things just seem to be working out for me. And then I'll have like a week where I just feel like garbage and I feel like nothing's working out for me. But
Mhm.
that's also just kind of life and that's how it goes.
Absolutely.
But as long as you know that you need to get back into a positive mindset, that's really all that matters.
And I love that you said like you'll have really high peaks of motivation, but then you also will be down. And I can relate to that. And I'm sure lots of people can relate to that, where it's just like it's not always rainbow and sunshine and glitter and rainbows and all the things. It
Yeah.
can be really difficult at times. And I think the type of work you have to do, you really have to motivate yourself. And I know a little bit of like how much work there really is behind your job. And so I'd love for you to discuss a little bit of that as well, like the hidden things that nobody sees
Yeah.
is just like the amount of work is crazy. And it almost like for me, it created a new respect for all the people in the industry.
Absolutely. I'd say the hardest part is at the end of the day, you're really learning how to be your own boss. Like you are the business, you are the brand, you're the brains, you're everything behind, who you are online. And
Mhm.
that's more than just one job. Like you're wearing so many hats.
Yeah.
And that was an exciting part for me because I like to learn. So I was constantly watching YouTube videos, like hours and hours of YouTube videos, because I had no idea how to edit pictures or edit videos or do anything really. Um, but yeah, I agree with you. Lots of people don't understand, the time that goes into things. And um, like your creativity isn't free either. I think a lot of the time people think like, oh, that must have been so easy. You just, thought of it. And then, but there's like a whole process that goes into it, like all the way down to just the idea. And
Mhm.
then, it depends whether or not a brand reaches out to you or you reach out to them. But then you have a focus. So you have a product. And then
Mhm.
there's a product, and you need to build the creative aspect of it. So you want to, create like a mood board essentially. You want to see what it could look like. And then
Mhm.
you have to plan, okay, do I need to drive somewhere? Do I need to book a location? Do I need to rent or buy anything? And then I always like to plan my day. So, like the day of, I don't plan like a day in advance or anything. I'm talking like I wake up in the morning and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this deal today. And then I start the process. And sometimes it takes me all day or it takes me like many, many hours. And the nice thing about it though is that you are your own boss.
Yeah.
So if there comes a day where you're like really struggling and you feel like you need a mental health day, you can absolutely take that.
Mhm.
And honestly, that's the reason I love this job so much, is because I would feel like that when I was going to my 9 to 5, and like feeling like that all throughout the week and then dreading going back to work on Monday is a terrible feeling.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that for myself anymore. So this is like, if that's something that anybody struggles with on the daily, like consider being your own boss and just, listen to your body.
Absolutely. And what
Yeah.
first steps would you give to someone if they were looking to get started?
I would check with yourself first. I would really ask myself some serious questions, especially because I feel like it's kind of a trend now, and I'm seeing that a lot. It's like, hey, if you want to grow your Instagram and get free things, like that's just the wrong way to get into the space. If you get into the space for the wrong reason, you're going to stay in it for the wrong reason.
Mhm.
So I would just ask myself, why am I really doing this? Like I would suggest writing it down on a piece of paper, because I know I did that. I need to find that piece of paper, but I remember doing that and I was like, why am I doing this? And I had to give myself 3 really good reasons to be doing it.
Mhm.
And I think if you can't come up with 3 reasons, then maybe it's not for you.
Mhm.
But after that, I would just ask people for help. Like anybody that's listening to this, if you're even considering it, ask me for help. Like I'm not one of those people that's going to charge or, gatekeep the information. Because when I started, I couldn't find information.
Yeah.
Nobody was, at least for free. Everybody was like, buy my course. And well, that's great that you can, build a business for yourself. There's other people that need the resources for free. So I
Mhm.
just talk to your friends, start taking pictures of everything. Just, I don't know, just be yourself, honestly.
I think that that's the most important thing is to be yourself. And I
Absolutely.
think a lot of people get stuck in well, I don't have anything to offer. And it's like,
Yeah,
you just need to start being yourself. And like you said, it's easy to just start capturing things throughout your day and
absolutely.
posting them. And
Yeah.
it's scary. I know
Yep.
it's very scary to break
Yes.
through that because there's so many layers around judgment and the fear and the all the things that come up. And so it's really
Yeah.
rewarding once you kind of push through it.
Yeah.
But I definitely appreciate that you're like, I'll help you guys out
Oh,
because
absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
hard because, like you said, there's a lot of people who are just keeping that information, or you have to buy this $1,000 plus course,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
crazy. It's crazy. So,
Yeah.
who was your first brand deal with?
They're called Flat Tummy Co.
Okay.
I know, super random. I think I had like tried their tea when I was like, I don't know, maybe 15 or something. So I like knew of them, but I didn't follow them online. I had never really ordered anything from them, but they reached out and they wanted to pay me, which was great because typically when you're first starting out, that's not something you have access to.
Right.
So they wanted to pay me and I was like, hell yeah, if you're gonna pay me, I'll do basically whatever it is you want me to do. So yeah, just I don't know, just it was random. I don't even know how they found me. I always like to ask now. I wish I started asking earlier on, but I just always like to know, hey, how did you find me? Because I want to know like what's working for me.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
so cool. And so I forgot to ask you before when you were talking about manifestation, what is one of the first things that you kind of manifest into your life?
Honestly, I just manifested this working out for me. I just really wanted it to work out because I couldn't see myself being happy going back to a 9 to 5. And I was getting so discouraged because, like you said, when you're starting, you don't feel like you don't have anything to offer, right? Because you see these influencers online and they have all this free stuff and they've got these like luxurious brands and you're like, I don't have that. But like you don't need to have that. You just need to be passionate and I guess a good person. That's all you really need.
Mhm. That's so
Yeah.
awesome. And so are you fully able to support yourself off of this?
Yes.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah, it takes some time and you have to be patient because you are basically growing a business. So just really have to be patient, which is hard because
Yeah.
I'm very impatient.
I was going to say that is probably one of the hardest things, even personally, that I have to deal with, where I'm just like, there's some people who get that like overnight success, but that's
Yes.
really rare. But we were kind of shown that on TikTok, especially where it was like
Always.
everybody was blowing up and it was like crazy nuts. And so you're kind of just like not seeing much, not seeing much, not seeing much. And I actually heard this quote today where it's like, you have to keep going when nobody's watching. You have to keep going when
Yes. Oh,
nobody's
I love
liking,
that.
because you have to go through that. But I mean, it's hard. So how did
Yeah.
you like stay patient?
Oh my gosh. Again, like talking to my mom, talking to my family because like
Mhm.
there's days where I'm like really like upset about it and I'm an emotional person because I'm like I don't know if this is going to work. Like I just really it always comes down to doubting myself. So
Mhm.
I always need like the reassurance of my family or my mom, but also just like being realistic about it too. Just like realize that this is real life and things don't happen overnight
Yeah.
and you mentioned overnight success. And like you said, that's something we see all the time on TikTok. And while I think that's great, and those people are very lucky, they also miss all the lessons that you learn when you work for it. And I'm not saying that they don't work for it, but there's definitely something different about, you know, going through the motions every day, doubting yourself. That's a learning process in itself. So I
Mhm.
really think that if it's taking you a long time, don't feel like you need to rush it. Just sit in it because maybe it's not the time for you. You just need to wait for it to be.
Absolutely. I love talking to you about this because I feel like you understand it, where it's like some people don't understand that type of lifestyle. And so
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, how do you deal with people that are just like, what is that? That's not a real job. Like, do you experience that?
Yeah, I get that often too. Like almost every time someone asks me what I do for work and I tell them, they're like, they have no idea.
Yeah.
Like they just kind of see it as like, wait, how do you make money off of that? And I think a lot of it comes from, like my age, my generation. I just kind of am a believer that, I don't think we were put on this earth to work a 9 to 5 for somebody else, to have just like a little bit of money to live.
Mhm.
I like want each day to be a different experience, and I can do that when I'm working for myself. You know what I mean? You can't do that when you're working for someone else.
Mhm.
And it's the older generations that don't see it because they don't see you working 9 to 5 every day. So like in their head, there's no way you're making any money, or there's no way this is a real job. But it is very much a real job. You have to present yourself. You are something that's presentable, you know what I mean? And yeah, I think it's just like the difference in generations.
Yeah.
Some people think that it's like not a normal job, but like the younger generations understand. So I
Mhm.
think it's just growing like with age over the years, people will start to accept this as a career, or like it's the trickle effect, right? There's going to be so many other jobs that you can do over the years, so this is just another one of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what do you call yourself when someone says, what do you do? What do you say?
So I either say I do social media marketing. It depends who's asking me, honestly. Like if it's a friend or something, I'll be like, oh, I do content creating, because
Yeah.
they understand that you're making content for a brand.
Yeah.
But some people, or like I never call myself an influencer, because I don't know. I don't
Hmm.
like, I don't want to be associated with the stereotype that you're just doing it for the wrong reasons. And that's kind of how I feel about the word influencer.
Hmm.
So I either say content creation or social media marketing.
Hmm. That's so cool. And do you
Yeah.
work for other companies, like do all of their content, or do you do more like one-time deals type thing?
It depends. Like sometimes if I'm wanting to be like a little bit more busy, I'll reach out to like local businesses, or I sign a contract with a brand and they want a certain amount of things instead of just like a one-off. So I did that for a little bit actually for a business in Cochrane, and I just kind of, I have the access to everything that could bring in a whole new demographic to a lot of businesses. So, I present myself as a social media marketer who can bring a whole new demographic to your business online.
Hmm.
And that's something that's like foreign to a lot of business owners. They don't know how to, make a reel, or just draw people's attention in. So I do that, and that can be a little bit more consistent. But if I'm just doing like one-off deals here and there, it'll just be like every other month kind of thing.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. And I also remember one thing that you talked about of being your own boss and having that flexibility to run your own schedule. And I think it's really important what you said, because you said, if I want to have a mental health day, I can. And
Yeah.
that is very important because I know, like you said, in a 9 to 5, there's not many opportunities to do that. And
No.
I think nowadays, with how in tune we are in a lot of ways with ourselves and with our bodies, having that flexibility is huge. So what has that done in your life? That flexibility, that I guess you have control over your own schedule. I mean, I'm sure there's positives and negatives, but I'd
Yeah.
really love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it just kind of made me manage my emotions better.
Mm.
And I didn't realize how bad I was at managing my emotions until I had the time to, because when I would, wake up in the morning and I'd be like, oh my God, I just feel so, so depressed today, but I have to go to work and put those feelings aside. I had to do that all the time and just like pretend that nothing was wrong and just be like happy. And
Mm.
that led me to not being able to manage my emotions. I would push it so far back and then I'd forget about it until it would come up again, but then I'd have to push it back. So when
Mm.
I started actually taking mental health days for myself, I allow myself the time to feel that, and then I can forget about it. But if I can't just sit in it and process it, then it'll just stick with me. You know what I mean? It's just, you just keep pushing it further and further down.
Mhm.
And that's something that the 9 to 5 made me do unintentionally, but that's definitely something I was doing.
And it's very important that you do sit with those emotions a lot of the time. It's hard. It's not an easy thing to do. I think a lot of the things we've talked about today, they're not never easy things that you need
No.
to do or have to do, but they're very necessary for growth. The biggest
Yeah.
thing I learned was because I did very similar where I was always so busy and
Yeah.
that really distracted me from everything I was feeling. And so as soon as like COVID hit, that was when it first started because
Yeah.
I literally would not break ever or rest. And then when it came to COVID, where you weren't really allowed to do anything, it was like,
Yeah.
okay, there's a lot here.
Yeah.
There's
There's a lot to unpack.
a lot to unpack, and it's crazy. You don't realize until you have that time to sit, but how much in our day-to-day lives with busyness and that hustle culture and all of it
Yeah.
that we forget to check in and deal with some of those things in order to become a greater version of ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. I've enjoyed talking to you so much. I have four final questions, but before we get into that, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Honestly, no, you've been like really great about asking me to like elaborate on things, which I love because I was like, oh my God, like if I have to think of things to say, like you're not going to be asking me questions. I don't know what I'm going to talk about it. So like this has been very smooth flowing. I love that.
Awesome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm very curious, so that helps me in my interviewing.
Yeah, of course. It's good to be curious because it shows that you care and you want to learn.
Absolutely. All right. So these are my final four questions. They're my favorite questions. That's why I save them till the end. So the
Okay, let's
first
do it.
one, yeah, the first one is, what is the best advice you've received and from whom?
Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm really going to have to think about this one.
These ones are going to be hard to think about. They're really good ones.
I honestly, I couldn't remember like a specific person giving me a quote, but I can remember the amount of times that my mom has just like reminded me to be myself. And
Mhm.
that is the best piece of advice that I could give anybody is just to be yourself. Like, especially in today's world, people are angry, people are scared, people are sensitive, and that's okay. But as long as you're just yourself every day, then you go home with no regrets because you were just yourself today.
Yeah, and I think to add on to that is that it's so important that we are ourselves because then we find the right people. And I think
Absolutely.
that's really important. When we're trying to be something we're not, it never ends up good.
No.
We need to be able to express our true self. So that
Yeah.
is a fantastic piece of advice. All right, the next one is, what is the worst advice you've received?
The worst advice? Oh, let me think back to all of my dance teachers. um, Again, like I couldn't quote like their exact words, but I'd say like the worst piece of advice that people have given me in the past is like um just telling me to get over it, I guess. And that relates back to working a 9 to 5 for someone else and them kind of just being like not understanding of the fact that you're struggling and they kind of just want you to like get over it.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to mental health, getting over it isn't an option. It's like learning to live with it and learning about yourself, honestly, not just getting over it. Getting over it is the worst piece of advice that anybody could give you
I think that,
because
yeah.
you need to heal from that stuff, whether it's like emotional trauma or anything, you need to heal.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
think that's my favorite answer to that question. I really like, I love that. That's a great answer.
I mean, it's
Okay.
vague, but it's true.
No, it's very true. I like the way that you took that and ran
Yeah.
with it. Okay, next question. What piece of advice would you give your younger self? Or if you can't think of it in that context, maybe someone in the younger generation?
I think I would tell my younger self that nobody else's opinion matters because, there are still times today where I do worry a little bit about what people think. And it depends on the situation. Like, it depends on who
Mhm,
I think I might be affecting.
mhm,
But like when it comes to social media, I've had many, many people who know nothing about me and know nothing about my life make judgments. And I did let that get to me at a certain point, and it definitely tears you down. And
Mm.
you can't let that happen because at the end of the day, like your emotions are very sensitive. You're vulnerable,
Mhm.
and sometimes it can be seen as being a little bit weak in a way, and people attack that. So I just, don't listen to what other people say, because honestly, nobody knows you better than you know yourself, or better than your parents know you.
Absolutely. I love that as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. Love this question because it leaves every interview in a really good state. And that question is, what are you grateful for?
Oh my gosh. I have so many things to be grateful for. How much time do we have? I'd say I'm grateful just for I'm grateful for the person that I am. Like, I'm grateful for every single moment and experience that I've gone through
Mhm.
thus far. And, like you asked me a year ago this question, I wouldn't have known what to say, because I was just in such a negative mindset that I didn't have appreciation for the things that shaped me. I saw them in a negative light, and I saw them as things that hurt me and tore me down and kind of ruined me.
Mhm.
But like I flipped that, and I see them as, lessons. And I genuinely don't even know who or where I would be if I didn't have the life experiences that I have. So I would just say that I'm grateful for every experience, bad or good, leading up to this point in my life.
That's so awesome. And I forgot to ask you before, but how can people find you? How can they connect with you and learn more about you in general?
You can find me on Instagram. I'm like quite active on my stories every day. Often I'm crying on there because, mental health's a real thing and we all struggle.
Mhm.
But I'm also on TikTok. I'm kind of a different entity on TikTok. I'm an alter ego. I play a little boy named Derek. But I'm also on Facebook. You can just search me, Shelby More So. I'm there.
Awesome. And your TikTok, I have to make a comment.
Oh
So,
no.
yeah, so I saw your TikToks way, way, way before I even knew about you because
Oh,
when I
really?
found your Instagram, yeah, when I found your Instagram page, I
Yeah.
saw you at a TikTok. So I went there and I'm like, oh, Derek? Yeah. And I was like, I know these videos. I saw them all over the place. And I was just like, dang, girl, get
I
it. Like,
know, right? It's super random, like a little boy. It's
but it
so
was
me
so
though. It's
fun.
so fitting. I love it.
I mean, you act it so well that I mean, it's just perfect. It's perfect. So
I've had lots of people say, like, how do you do that? How do you act? But I'm like, that's just kind of like, honestly, that's kind of my personality. And for some reason it clicked. And if you really know me on a personal level, like I'm like that during the day on my average day. I'm just kind of goofy like that. But I don't show that to everybody because, it's makes you vulnerable.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I definitely recommend that you check out her Instagram and her TikTok. They're very, very amazing. And again, she does talk so openly about things that she's going through, which is very refreshing because we don't see that often. So thank you so much, Shelby, for joining me today. You have given so many great pieces of advice, and I've loved talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope that like those that are listening, I hope they enjoyed it. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Shelby, for coming on and sharing your story and all of the things that you do today, and actually giving us so many valuable pieces of advice in the different type of industry that you work in, and just talking through some of your mental health struggles is huge. And I love that we have a very similar passion where we want to make people feel less alone. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I have enjoyed this conversation so much. And like she said, you can connect with her on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook, which is just down below. And don't forget that you can watch all of these interviews on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much, Shelby. Bye.